Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for other writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman. My guest today, this is the most unusual title we've had on the show, as far as I can remember, runner slash poet, Greg Lehman. Greg, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's an honor.
Okay, so we're going to get into Greg's bio and all that fun stuff in just a minute. But as those familiar with the show are familiar, we like to start things off talking about things we may have read or watched recently. Did we like them? Did we hate them? Did we feel indifferent about them? I'll go first just to give Greg a little time to collect his thoughts. Haven't really had as much time because I launched my crowdfunding for my short film. I'm going to really plug that when we get later in the show. So this weekend, I decided I'm just going to relax and I'm going to watch something I know I'm going to enjoy. And it's not the appropriate time of year, but I watched Die Hard. It was great, as it always is. And I turned the lights out and I have, put it on the TV. It was like, almost like a private screening. That was wonderful. And I'm also still enjoying Stanley Tucci's I'm blanking on the name, but it's his show. It's on Max. It's him eating his way through Italy, pretty much. That he goes through the different regions of Italy and talks about, investigates, however you want to put it, about their cuisine. And I've said this before. You watch this, it makes you want to get on a plane and just go to Italy and start eating because everything looks phenomenal. And I think that's part of what their intent was. So that's it for me. Again, crowdfunding, more plugs later in the show. Greg, what about you? Reading, watching, what have you been up to?
Well, just to draft off that a little bit, but yeah,
Sure.
thoughts and prayers with Bruce Willis, of course. And then, are you making a hit list as you're watching Stanley Tucci eat his way through Italy, or?
It's so much to keep track of. It's two seasons, if you want to call it that. The first one is six, and I think the second one is eight. So, like the first one, it's Tuscany and Rome and the Amalfi Coast. I think that's another one. So the second one would be more interesting because there's a lot of areas I'm not as familiar with.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then, yes, doubling down on the crowdfunding for the film, the unicycle picture that you posted recently. That was interesting, and wishing you all the best. Hope it comes to fruition for sure.
Thank you
But
so much.
yeah, yeah. So I read, voraciously. I read a ton. But right now I'm reading The Animals in That Country by Laura Jean McKay. Really enjoying it. Australian writer. She's a poet, playing in some really fun speculative regions where this disease goes out that allows people to, or kind of forces people to hear animals like what they're saying. And that look that's
So, wait,
really
so is it a book of poetry or is it a fictional work?
it's a fictional work.
Okay,
He's got a poet's voice and technique, and
got
that
it.
you kind of need that when you're imagining the voice of an animal. And there are all kinds
Sure.
of, there's ants are talking, dingoes, everything. So it's a ride. I enjoy it. But
So as you're reading it, do you imagine all the animals have this, the really thick Australian accent?
that's a good. So different whales actually have regional dialects they found.
Oh, okay.
But you would think, yeah, that like wherever animals are, they'll kind of talk
They all
differently.
sound like Chris Hemsworth, is what you're saying.
That would be a joy, actually. That would be nice. They aren't as charming as he is, and I hope that intrigues more people to read the book.
That's, that's great. Okay.
Yeah,
So Greg, let's unless you have anything else from the reading watching list.
yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of also what I'm studying for my security industry essentials at the moment. So that's
Ooh,
taking.
sounds like a real page turner.
It is fascinating. I will say I do enjoy the financial world. But then yeah, I just watched Harriet, about Harriet Tubman.
Hmm.
Very, very much, encourage people to see it, at least learn her story, of course. But then I just started E2 Mama Tambien,
Oh, okay.
the baby Diego Luna, which is interesting with Andor coming out very soon.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's like, is that like 20 years old? Something like that?
24.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So like 2001.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That
What
does
is
remind me. I am looking forward to the second season of Andor. But we'll get into that another time. Okay. So Greg, let's talk a little bit about you, but first I will read the bio. So Greg Lerman. Greg Lehman, I'm sorry. Greg Lehman earned an MFA in creative writing from Lindenwood University and a BA in journalism from Cal State Fullerton. He is published and edited as a poet, professional writer, and journalist, has completed a poetry and photography collection about living, working in, and finding community in the running world. Run, Burn, Rejoice, two speculative novels, a novella-length speculative poem, and no shortage of poems and short stories. I like that. His poetry has most recently been published in Like the Wind magazine and forthcoming on April 24th, which is coming up soon, by Dark Winter Lit. Okay, so Greg, this is going to be a really interesting discussion because, like I said at the intro, you're a runner and a poet. And I used to be a runner until my heels decided to say, you're not doing that anymore, mister. Okay, let's start with the running aspect. Have you been like a runner all your life? I mean, did you start as a preteen, teenage years, like high school track, that sort of thing?
My mom loves telling the story that she saw me running from a very young age, and just that I had this joyful look on my face as I was just, running around the playground or fields or whatever. And she likes to tell the story that she's like, I knew you had it from a very young age, just from the glee that you had in it and seeing how fast you can go and everything like that. But ran a little bit of cross country, 2 years of cross country in high school. I was very much into skateboarding at the time, so that had more of my attention. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. And then in my early 20s, a buddy got me into trail running, which
Mm.
was a lot of fun. And I love nature, love being outside. And you get to explore beautiful places, running trails. You can make destinations out of it. Like I've raced, in Utah and Oregon, Washington. It's an amazing way just to see a new place. But I would say that I started serious training in running when I joined Cal Coast Track Club in 2017. They're an Orange County based party of monsters that live, breathe, and eat running, and they've been instrumental in what I've done as a runner. They took me under their wing, and then I've been sponsored by Chosky Endurance Collective since 2020. My friend Tyler Andrews is a professional runner, mountaineer, and
Oh, wow.
uh, he's been nice enough to pay for my coaching
Oh,
since Zandy Mangold is the absolute man in every way, and I'm in very good hands with him. And before him, Chris Brown, who's also a
mhm.
professional runner. So yeah.
So also, okay, so kind of skimming over your bio that you do a lot of long distance running, like you do marathons, but you also do or Ironman.
No, no. So I do ultra marathons.
Oh,
Ironman.
okay. I'm sorry. I thought I must have I saw the long distance thing and I thought that sounds like an Ironman to me.
I've worked well. So a couple of my poems take place working at Ironman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's maybe where that comes from. Because yeah, I was lucky enough to work at a couple of Ironman World Championships in Kona and then in St. George as well. But those are triathlon events. Much respect to triathlon, but my
Mm,
heart for running. And yes, I have completed 7 ultra marathons.
wow.
Anything above a marathon distance. So yeah.
That is amazing. Okay, so let us take a quick turn from the running to the poetry. So, let's say, have you been a poet as long as you can remember? Or and you said you're a voracious reader now. Were you a voracious reader as a child? I mean, did you read everything, or did you kind of veer towards poetry from the beginning, just kind of like, I like this stuff, and I'm gonna keep reading it?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough. My mom and my dad, really, really emphasized and encouraged, a passion for literature from a very young age. Always read to me and my sister. And we would, get to choose books. Like getting to go to the library was a gift, and we would just, however much time you gave us, that's how much time we would love to spend at the library and always be checking out books. Poetry in particular, like I always loved reading poetry. And I will say, like, in terms of writing, the the bug was set in a good way from a very young age. I remember like I was writing like, little stories about dinosaurs, things like that, and
Who doesn't?
yeah, of course, of course. But I remember very early writing something and showing it to my dad, and he had like a couple notes for me, and it set the tone of like being teachable, being like, okay, all right, and like that's the criticism, like you never take it personally.
Hmm.
You just, okay, improve it and take it forward because you want the piece to work. It's not about you, it's about the work. And that was probably about when I was 5, I
Oh
think.
my God.
Very young, and I've
Oh,
always,
that's I've seen writers who get that kind of reaction, like that they take it very personally and they act like they're five, but they're actually full-grown adults.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, if you don't want to grow, hold on to the
How
issue.
dare you question my genius?
Exactly, so and I'm not, of course, I'm not perfect, of course, but
Mhm.
just like that's what I've always, striven to hold to, and that comes from a very young age from my parents. So
Okay, so that raises two questions. The first one, it sounds like you were doing this all through your youth, and I'm guessing especially middle school and high school. Did you have a teacher or teachers who were really encouraging and supportive about this? And, oh, that you should keep doing this. This is really good stuff. And the second question is, do you have anything that you wrote then that you are absolutely certain will never see the light of day, that another set of human eyes will never see this material?
yeah, yeah, I always had very encouraging teachers, like from a very young age. Dinosaurs are always going to come up a lot in conversations I have, but I got an award for this book about dinosaurs I wrote in second grade, and that was like, yeah, you're decent at this. Keep it up. And like,
Okay.
even if I wasn't, I love it. I absolutely, I'm always counting down to when I could write again. And that's been with me forever. But yeah, I'll say, yeah, all through, elementary school through college, I always had, wonderful teachers. I guess probably like the nugget I like to share is Professor John Norton at Concordia University. My line that I always love from him is never approach a book with respect. It has to earn it from you. And so
Oh.
like, I take that seriously as a writer too. Like you have to bring something of value, something insightful, something special, something that will connect. Because what are you doing otherwise? But oh yeah, then you asked about like stuff. You're asking what I wouldn't want people to see, or
I said, do you have stuff in your personal catalog of stuff you've written that, like for, a screenwriter like myself, that first script, like, would you ever let anybody see this? Oh God, no. Yeah, that sort of thing. Do you have anything of your work, like from the very early days, or if you want to call it that, that kind of falls into that category?
I guess like I would assume every writer has just tons of stuff. I mean, even, published people like, they've got stuff that they try to take off the market and everything like that. But that's part of the process. You write and you fail and you embarrass yourself and you're like, I mean, that goes for all life. You have bad performances as a runner that you wish weren't out there, but it's part of the process and you learn. But particular pieces, I can't really think of too much right now that I haven't wanted
Okay.
guess I'm kind of an open book, I guess.
No,
But yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so let's talk about the two works that we referred to earlier. So the first one is American Kaiju Blues, and the other one is Run, Burn, Rejoice. So kind of give us like a the elevator pitch for both of those, the quick summation, and what was the inspiration for both of them? And it's your choice, whichever one you want to start with.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we're talking about running, so I'll get into, run, burn, rejoice. Like I've been,
Sure.
very, very, blessed and privileged and lucky to, have had the good health I have. And also, the community, the people, the support, to do what I've done. I worked in the running industry for 7 years, and that's amazing. You gain incredible community by moving through, different consumer groups and different communities and everything like that, coming from a place of like, either representing, a retailer or a brand. And, that's a privilege, like
Hmm.
you walk into a place and you're like, I'm with, fill in the blank. And they're like, oh, right this way, sir, like, cause you've dropped that name and that's your job. And like, you take that seriously. And like, that's been, instrumental in what I've been able to do working for, I worked at a runner's, no, Snail Space running shop. Love you, Snail Space. I worked for Hoka and I worked for Adidas. And so just those are major, major points of service for the running community. So working in those spaces, just, there's all kinds of inspiration came from like, my experiences working for those brands. Let alone training, let alone racing, let alone the beautiful places I've seen. So that has, been just a wellspring of inspiration for poetry. And like throughout that journey, like I've written, poems about everything, but like a lot of poems about running. And so like got a lot of those together, combined them with pictures, and I've been, put them in this collection and have been sending them out to publishers and agents. Shout out again to Alex and Simon at Like the Wind for publishing my work in their magazines. And yeah, I love it. And then recently, I've been drafting off the publication to do readings of the
Hmm.
poems. I did two, like one on the way to LA Marathon recently, one like at the finish line, like
Wow.
yeah, it was fun. And I was probably the only guy reading a poem at the end of the LA Marathon. Maybe there are others, but
Okay.
yeah, no, it was a joy, and like that's been a fun way to also get out there more because I'll lead into kaiju, but just
Sure.
I've recently been really like tapping into like just the in-person community that I have in and around Southern California in terms of poetry. But yeah, I hope that
Okay.
answers.
No, that's so one of the things I did want to ask. One of the things I couldn't help but notice is for Run, Burn, Rejoice, it involves the writing and the descriptions that really capture not just the physical of the running, like how you feel, but also your surroundings and also, I guess you'd call them like the mental sensations that one might experience while running, not necessarily just the runner's high, but the breathing and how your muscles feel and how it feels like when your feet hit the pavement. So was it, I guess, not necessarily difficult, but did you find it challenging to try to put all of those feelings and sensations into words? Or did it, for I guess because you've been doing it for so long, both the running and the poetry, that it was a little easier, it kind of came naturally?
Well, that's a huge compliment. Thank you. Like, I aim to put people there, and also speak to like, so many people have said it, but just like, the best work is the work that like you already know and then connects with you. Just like
Hmm.
that's it. So I appreciate that, Paul. But yeah, I guess like so I do audio notes. While I'm running, like, you get lines, you get
Sure.
points of inspiration that you hold on to. So like you learn to pay attention, you have these, jewels that kind of come with you in the process.
Hmm.
And just when you do it a lot, like there are tons of people who run a lot more than me, but like I certainly love it and do it as often as I can. But when you do it like that, it just things come to you all the time. Like these are gifts of like that have come to me, in the poetry collection, I speak to DNFing, which is did not finish. That's happened to me on the 100-mile distance 3 times now.
Oh, wow.
I will figure it out at some point. But then, yeah, you get, the injuries, the joy of, accomplishing, different PRs or getting to the tops of certain mountains or finding your way out from a place where you're lost. Like these are all things that like I, I take as gifts and have, done my best to put into my work.
Okay, so this is it's a weird two-part question, but or the first one, like I said, I thought you did a really good job describing the locations of where
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
running, especially the ones in Los Angeles. Now, how did you put those together? Is it just mental notes? You said you like, I guess you take notes while you're running, which to me is amazing because when I run, even like for training runs or when I'm out, I don't really do it competitively anymore. I usually just listen to podcasts and just because it helps keep my
I'm
mind
shocked,
off the
Paul.
off
I'm
the fact
shocked.
that I'm running because I think it's not a distraction, but it's almost like that way I'm not so focused on the running that it's going to overwhelm me. It's also it's entertaining as well. Let's see. So again, I can't say her name. Do you take mental notes? You tell SIRI to to write something down, or do you just kind of like you like make maybe you take notes, so to speak, and then you just kind of like just put it all on paper after you get home and after the race.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent question because I do all of that. So like the notes, like, when they come to me, I'll do them, but then sometimes you just repeat them in your head so that when
Hmm.
you get home, you write them down. Because if you're doing a workout and you're at tempo pace, like you're trying to survive. You're not thinking about
Hmm.
taking out and like recording something. You just, sometimes I will just repeat a line. But speaking to the podcast, for sure I've listened to this podcast on runs, and many more. I have many points of interest, but I really enjoy making playlists for different runs, making
Okay.
playlists for music. I listen to all kinds of different music, and that's a particular point of joy too. And music will lift you, like the kind of
Hmm.
music, like whatever your indulgence is, whatever your guilty pleasures are, or whatever, like maybe like a DJ plays like a certain type of music, or any kind of musician, like whatever they're into, you get to explore that more on your runs. And listening to music that inspires and energizes you certainly does wonders for performance, I think, but then
Yeah.
also like listening to just the birds and silence and learning how to be okay with being just with yourself and being alone. That's an immeasurable gift that comes from running for
Hmm.
sure.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, so like when I run, I'll listen to podcasts, but because I always have some kind of project in the works, so a script or a new story or whatever.
Yeah.
And even though I'm listening to something in the back of my mind, or at least in my subconscious, I'm like going over the story. So it's almost like the podcast becomes white noise while I'm running. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure out like how does the guy get from this room over to the next building, that sort of thing. Just trying to figure out story details. Now, I don't want to say is that similar to what you do, but what do you, as you're running, do you kind of think of, okay, hey, this is something I want to remember. This is something I want to keep in mind, that this would be, hey, this trail would make for a great poem. Do you kind of, and then do you, again, going back, do you write it down? Do you just, make a couple of mental notes? I mean, what is your process for putting, I guess, a poem about running together?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Emphatic yes to all that too. But yeah, I mean, like, particular things will happen on a trail run. Like I have the poem where like I encountered a family of boars, when I was lost in Texas.
Hmm.
Like I was like, if I get through this, I'm definitely gonna write about it. I hope I survive this, But yeah, no, there are certain things that happen, and you're just like, I'm definitely gonna write this. And then I'd say the process is just like making the time. And I'm a little notorious for this, but I'm very much like an early to bed, very early to rise kind of guy, and like
Hmm.
that's how you make time, to actually get the writing down. So like it's not sometimes, yeah, like when I get home, if I have time, I'll start writing, but more often than not, like I've got my notes and then those, I'll work on them when I can, but usually it's in my writing time, like in the morning, and then whenever I can get it like piecemeal later on. But yeah, and that's another I'll say this too, just in terms of like, you were speaking to the process as
Hmm.
you're running and working out and everything like that. One of the, we mentioned Star Wars earlier, but there was a character in one of the series who was speaking, like somebody asked them why they work out, why they were exercising, this one character, and I'm blanking on the character, shame on me, but just so they spoke to how, we really are just systems for oxygen and blood to go through. And when we're fitter, those processes, get more efficient and move around
Hmm.
the systems faster. And that's going to move around your thoughts. That's going to move around, everything that you're already thinking about, lead you to more thoughts. So I really, really do see a positive relationship between like fitness and creativity, in terms of like, getting more ideas, being out more and getting more inspiration from like that tree or this person or like something goofy someone said, while you're out, I think it gets you out more. Not to downplay anybody who just finds, everything they need just by sitting in one place. Awesome. If that works for you, I do not think there's any wrong way to go about this craft.
Okay, yeah, and sometimes, I mean, it gets to the point that I'm running and I'm listening to a podcast, and all of a sudden, and I'm, like I said, in the back of my mind, I'm going over this story that I'll pause the podcast. I'll keep running. I'm not going that fast, but I'll pause it and I'll like almost like mumble to myself, okay, need to do that, or I'll just, I can see the words in my head, so to speak. And it's almost like I make a mental note that I will try to remember that, or I'll,
Yes. Yes.
This happens very rarely now, but I'll actually stop and like take that because I have the arm thing for my phone, and I'll take my phone out and just write something down because I think I'm not going to remember this in 45 minutes when I get home, so I need to write it down now. And then when I get home, I can go back and look at it and say, "Oh, I'm so glad I wrote this down because I would not have remembered that." Do you ever have that kind of feeling when you're running, or do you stop, or do you like are you able to keep going and just I guess remember it or make some kind of note?
Definitely, and to draft off of that even more, trying to memorize a couple words from whatever the line was or the character was, you try to memorize that. You can't like, and that's great, to try to memorize it. But I find that like thoughts like need to get out to make room for more thoughts, so that's where like, recording, a note or something like that, on audio, that's good because like for sure, there's a million more behind them, and like if it is something good, you want to keep it, even if it's bad, like you are getting other notes, and that might lead to a good note of a good character or story. Um, the real treasure is when you go back through those and you're like, I have no memory of that.
How did I come up with that?
Yeah, yeah. So it's a good thing that you did. And like depending on the type of run I'm on, like I'll stop or I'll I mean if you follow me on the socials, like you'll see the pictures I take sometimes on runs. And those tend to be more low-key runs. Like if it's a workout or something like that, like there's I have to I have to memorize it, if I am lucky on that, lucky enough on that run to get a point of inspiration. So
Okay. One of the things I really wanted to ask you about this. So, in Run, Burn, Rejoice, there is one of the works is called Tempe, October 2021, Account Visits Demo Run for Christian. To me, that one just really stood out as just very powerful, and it talks about I guess this is a friend of yours who was Christian, and I would love to have you talk a little bit more about that one and the background behind it, and also, I mean, how was it to write that? Because it sounds like it has a very personal connection to you.
1,000%. I really appreciate that. Yeah. My, trigger warning for people who might have, issues with suicide. But yes, my good friend Christian, he, committed suicide, years ago, and I found out late, through his sister. And I was on a work trip, found out about it. And it really affected me because I'll share that part of what I speak to in the poem was that you know we stayed in touch, we talked and everything, and I knew he was in a hard place, and like I hadn't checked in a while, and like um, I really dealt with some shame about like, and I think this is a pretty common feeling in these situations where it's like, what could I have done?
Hmm.
I and we never know. We'll never know, what is in a person's heart and what we can know because we only have this life and this timeline. But that was something that like, that's where poetry is and any writing really is incredibly useful, where we can work out these things on the page, really be honest with ourselves about like where we have fallen short, where we want to grow more, points of sadness, of course, and hopefully, come forward to something that speaks to that experience in an authentic way and in a way that gives honor and respect to this person. But Christian was a beautiful person. I miss him every day. And yeah, that, finding that out, on a work trip. And then, in the poem, I speak to like being on, and this will go back to like, my coach I mentioned earlier, Chris Brown, who was an amazing source of support for me in many ways. But, in that poem, I speak to like, finding out this news, still doing my workouts and everything and falling short. Like that's one of the lines I repeat over and over is like I miss my target. I
Hmm.
miss my target. And then like in another stanza I refer to Chris, one of the best things he ever told me. And he's a world-class athlete, for sure. But he, one of the best things he ever told me is like half my workouts go well. And like accomplishing what he has, that gives me a lot of tools around like, being gentle with myself. It's like you had a bad workout, that means that you had a bad workout.
Hmm.
What's next? Everyone does. And yeah, that poem, like thank you for asking about that. Like you know, I think about Christian often and he was a beautiful person and I'm glad that the poem speaks well of him.
Yeah, well, what that kind of we've had a few guests on before that writers who have used their writing and their creativity as a way of a kind of a catharsis to deal with trauma to kind of help get them through it. Did you find that writing the poem helped you, I guess, deal with what happened to your friend, or was it kind of like you thought that I really wanted to honor him, he was a great guy, and I think this is the best way to do it, or was it just a little of everything?
I think it was a little bit of everything. Yeah, I think that I work through a lot. I mean, that's one of the best things, writing does for us, I think, is gives us like a private venue just to kind of express anything. And I always
Mhm.
go back to this with running and athletics too, is that like if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're, had a win, if you had a loss, if you're confused, there's this thing that you could channel everything into. And it's private. It can be private, it can be shared, it could be whatever you want. But there is this thing here that you can really spill your soul onto and choose to share it or not. I go back to Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, which was instrumental to me. But do you know The Artist's Way? By
I do not.
Oh my goodness, so it's I highly recommend it to everybody. But it's a program, it's a book that leads you through the process of just being regimented about writing. And a major part of it is I'm so glad I get to share about this. This is great. But a major part of the program is writing morning pages. That's 3 pages, and you could do them anytime, but you just spill for three pages, just bleh, just get it out, and having that avenue just to share anything and knowing it's completely private, the side of the NSA. But you get to just, completely share and get used to being loose in your writing and expressing, in an honest way. So like that's where I've kind of found like a way of working through things in my writing. And I that came from, a very young age too. So.
Sure. Okay. You did mention that, a lot of writing is very personal. So was writing this poem about your friend, was it a difficult choice to write it and then say, I'm going to, let everybody see this? Or did you write it with the intention, I want everybody to see this?
Yeah, with this kind of writing, like I am thinking of an audience, like you're hoping. I'm hoping for an audience, of course.
Sure.
But in terms of like, that's a debate as old as time. And the QWERTY podcast, that's another great podcast about writing that I listen to, about memoir
Mhm.
mostly. And like um they speak a lot to like, when dealing with like really sad situations where like somebody was violent to somebody else or something like that. It's like, should I share this coming from one voice speaking for another person's situation? And like, can that even go to like a place of litigation, everything like that,
Sure.
people wrestle with that, and I always have, always will, about what they are willing to share. But with this, what it is something that like I feel very comfortable and strongly about sharing publicly. So.
Okay. No, that's great. That's great stuff. So let's also talk about your other work, okay, so this show should be releasing right around the same time as your other work, American Kaiju Blues. First, you have to tell people what do you mean by the title, because I mean, people are immediately going to think about Godzilla and other, big monsters.
Yeah. So kaiju just refers to, Godzilla is probably the best known, and, major fan, huge fan, since I was very
Okay.
young. But yeah, so the movie Cloverfield is easily one of my favorite movies.
Okay.
I had a great experience too seeing it in the theaters. It was a packed theater on like I think like the week it came out,
Hmm.
so like the film is so kinetic, like it's in real time, and it's about this American kaiju, done like seen through the filter of a very I feel like a very American filter, which is
Mm,
found footage kind of thing,
sure.
it didn't start with Blair Witch, and I'm sure like plenty of other regions have experimented with it for sure. So I can't even say like it originated in America accurately. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it certainly has been, laid into by our artists, here, and everywhere, but like to see Cloverfield take on, like kind of that filter on, the kaiju, and what they did with Cloverfield. I just kind of, put that mask on of like, what would it be like and living in LA, and then, related it to, feelings of, universal feelings of loneliness and anger and things like that. And it's a lot of fun it was a lot of fun to write. My writing group, the Lindies, they've been, an amazing source of, support and inspiration in my writing. But they helped me make it what it is. And, shout out Suzanne Craig at Dark Winter Lit, who, decided to publish it and that'll be coming out on the 24th. So that's kind of the backstory there.
Okay, no, that's great. So this episode will release right around the same time. So where can people find both Run, Burn, Rejoice, and also where can they find American Kaiju Blues?
Yeah, so American Kaiju Blues will come out on Dark Winter Lit on the 24th. And I was also, very, very lucky to be friends with JD Isop. He released his second book, Reluctant Prophets, on Mood Tide Press at an event a couple weeks ago now, in tandem with the AWP here in LA. And he
Okay.
invited me to read a poem. And so I read it. That recording's on all my socials if people want to see me read it. And it was a lot of fun. And it landed well with a bunch of people, which was just such an honor. I was walking on air. But yeah, so people can check it out there. You can check out my video on the socials. They can check out the poem on the 24th. Run, Burn, Rejoice. I am slowly releasing like poem by poem with readings on my socials. Loudowl.org is my website. Shout out Squarespace, great platform.
I
You don't know coding,
was going to say, not a sponsor.
not a sponsor, yeah, but yeah, just a lovely just a lovely outlet for anybody really. And so yeah, so I've been releasing different poems from that, reading them in different areas, just to kind of draw more attention to the work as I am looking for agents or publishers or anybody who could give it a home. And so yeah, that's where people can look me up, and I've got Substack and Instagram, all that kind of thing too.
Oh yeah, actually, you raised a great point. I just want to ask this really quick. I did see it on, I think it was on some of your Instagram feed, was that you've done readings for your work. So what is the reaction to this? I mean, do you get people who are there for the poetry? I mean, do you get running fans who just, think I want to hear this guy to, give his flowery talk about running? I mean, what is the makeup of your audience, and also how are the reactions to it?
Yeah, it's a good question because like on social media, like I'm mostly known for Best Coast Greg. Like people recognize me, which is funny, and people just call me by it. And I like the name. It's positive
Sure.
and fun. This is the best coast. But yeah, all due respect to all the coast. But yeah, so I mean, reaction is great because I've also got at Greg Writing too, which is another Instagram account that's linked to it. But Best Coast Greg's like the main source of activity. But it's funny because like if you look at the numbers, if you see like me running and stuff like that, or like the races, it's very high, which is
Mhm.
great. I love that. The poetry stuff, it shows people like they are more familiar and interact more with the running, so like I'm kind
Ah.
of drafting them off each other. But I qualify all that with saying like you can't worry about that. You can't
Mhm.
worry about audience numbers or anything like that because then that comes before the art and the passion and your commitment to it always clearly have to come first. So
Well,
uh,
what you're really doing is you're appealing to two very different and diverse groups
yeah.
that, I guess you are that middle of that Venn diagram of the running and the poetry, right in the middle of between the two. There's Greg.
Well, I really appreciate that. And like, before we started recording, I shared that I'm surprised it's not more common. So people do write about running. People have, Sabrina Little she's a professional athlete and a philosopher, and she
Hmm.
writes beautifully about running and how, I won't speak for her at all. I just encourage people to read The Examined Run, an amazing book that is exactly what it sounds like. But so people do write about running, but in terms of like poetry and everything, like so I see some people doing it, and it's great to see. But in turn, like no one's gonna write about like you. No one's gonna write
Yeah.
about everyone has their filter, and so like what I try to bring to the table is like just my own artistry and my own commitment and try to do what I can with it. And yeah, just hearing that I am a connector like that, I hope I only encourage more people to write and to find and more writers to run, because
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And again, like it is what you make it. Like, there's people who, again, doubling down on like, that Venn diagram between the two, like some people like just write poetry and are poets and they are writers. There's some people who just do ultra marathons and like that's their thing, or people who run just for fitness and don't race, like they're still a runner, so like that's where there's more commonality is like these are beautiful fields that you can make your own, and there's a ton of freedom and autonomy in them. Recognizing of course the privilege of like having good health and an opportunity and time to pursue them. I take those privileges very seriously and put them to good use.
Yeah, one of the because it reminds me that because when I'm talking to, I guess like especially newer screenwriters, that a lot of people compare themselves to more established writers, and I always say because one of the things I always found when I was running, especially I used to do a lot of half marathons. That was my thing, and I would pass people, and a lot of times people would pass me. And you can't take it personally. You can't think, oh, he's a better runner than me because he's going faster. Well, no, because as it comes down to, everybody runs at their own pace. That it doesn't matter how fast or slow somebody else is. What's important is how are you doing with this, and how motivated are you to get yourself across the finish line? That you can't worry about what somebody else is doing because maybe that person's been training for 2 years to do this and you've been training for 8 months and they're just faster, they're just slower, or you just have to not necessarily tunnel vision, but you're running, focus on the road ahead of you and just don't bump into anybody.
Yeah, yeah, and you speak to like what people bring to the table. Like any professional athlete will, immediately point to like, well, I put in a lifetime of work into this. Like I got a big old nose stamp, to all kinds of, unproductive habits to
Mhm.
like get where I am, and like, you have to be discerning, and like if you are seeing someone like get to a place that looks great and everything like that, hopefully that entices you to frame it in a positive way and be like, I want to do that. But if not, if you're there to like, for whatever your goal is, awesome. Keep at it. If
Hmm.
whatever you're comfortable with, whatever your journey is a very welcoming community. And like you get what you put in and you meet fascinating people, you make tons of friends. It's great. This is I get to talk to people and I'm just like, can I tell you the good news about running, brother? It's a lot of,
No,
it's,
no, sorry, gotta go.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, it's interesting because you're talking about the sense of community, and that is very prevalent. I mean, from my experience within the screenwriting community, that they're who are really supportive of one another because everybody's, even though writing for the most part is a solitary thing, everybody's experienced pretty much the same ups and downs that you have. You think, oh, I'm no good. I'm never gonna make it, or hey, this is great, or I'm a terrible writer. I assure you, everybody has gone through all of these same feelings and sensations before, that it just really helps to be able to talk to someone else about them, but also hearing other people talk about that. And you get the sense of, oh, wow, maybe I'm not alone in this, that it's great to have that kind of that support, that almost like your own personal support staff, or, all those shoulders that you can lean on when the time comes.
1,000%. And each community has like each run club, each like region has its own flavor, and
Hmm.
like I fully recognize and appreciate the privilege that like LA, you can't throw a rock without hitting a run club, right? And it's easy, and like we have the freedom to kind of like, choose like different, feel out the brands, feel out like what they bring to the table and see what you connect with. But I fully recognize that in other regions, it's like there might not be any run clubs, and you got to kind of do it on your own. And that is an opportunity to grow your own, discipline to push yourself. And I certainly run, on my own a lot too. But, speaking to, you were saying that that support staff, 1,000%. Like it's, the friends I have made, in the running community and everything, like I wouldn't be I can't overstate how grateful I am to the friends I've made and
Hmm.
the opportunities I've had through the people I know in running.
Okay, well, okay. So, Greg Lehman, this has been just a joy to talk to you both about running and the writing part of it. So, once again, where can people find? Okay, let's start with where they can find your poetry.
Yeah, so I post my stuff on loudowl.org. That's my website. I'm on Substack. It's just at Greg Writing Substack. It took me a long time to think of that. And then Medium, Greg Lehman. I'm on Wattpad. Been putting the poems on that, and I do want to put some fiction up there too soon. And then yeah, and these are all linked on my websites and everything. But yeah, Facebook. Strava. I love Strava. Please follow me on Strava. I absolutely love it. And then yeah, Best Coast Greg on Instagram and at Greg Writing on Instagram as well.
Are you on any other socials like Twitter X or Blue Sky,
As I was
or is
looking,
it just Insta?
well, no, as I was saying that, I was like, that's a lot, but I still feel like I'm missing some. I used to have a Twitter a long time ago, but I've just found, it's most useful to have what I have going right now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the site is loudowl.org.
Yep.
And also, so on at least Instagram, it's at Best Coast Greg and at Greg Writing. That's Greg with one G in the front and one at the back.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And anybody out there, if feel free to reach out. I'm very approachable, and I love talking about all this. And Paul, again, thank you so much for your opportunity. This has been a
No.
joy, and you were quick to respond too. Like
Well, because it's such an unusual combination, like I said, because the running and the writing, that I only know a handful of other writers who are I don't know if they're still as avid runners as they used to be a couple of years ago, but just to see someone who still does that and is so prevalent with it, it's just amazing to see it. I just really wanted to hear more about it. So,
oh,
Greg Lehman, thank you once again for being here today. This was wonderful.
absolute joy. And again, best of luck with the movie. I watching with excitement and just rooting for everything, like and all the guests that you have on the podcast and everything. I always get diamonds out of your
Oh, well,
podcast.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And so, like Greg said, yes, I have a crowdfunding ongoing for my short film project. It's on Indiegogo. Apparently, you can't find my name, but if you go to Indiegogo and just type in Shecky, Shecky, that should be the one that comes up. It's a short film. Right now, as of this recording, we're at about 25% funded. So fingers crossed that we can cross that finish line. I got a lot of plans to try and get people to give. So please, I don't want to say give till it hurts, but that's really what I'm really trying to say.
Love
So
it.
again, it's Indiegogo, and the project is Shecky, Shecky. Viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Social media, you can check out my screenwriting blog, maximumz.blog. I have a couple of posts in there that involve running, and running is a metaphor for screenwriting. Twitter, X, I still call it Twitter, at maximum_Z. The show's Twitter account is at podcast CWL. I'm on Blue Sky and Instagram as at Pez Screenwriting, and also the show has a Blue Sky account at podcast CWL. And of course, you can check out my Go Ahead and Ask books on Amazon. Those are the ones about screenwriting and Pi. Pi is a great post race thing. Like I said, that's Greg. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, run safe, and most importantly, go write something.